Hello, everybody, and we're off to the US of A, and we're meeting Delaina Morse. Hello, Delaina. How are you doing?
Hey, y'all.
Yeah. So, tell
I'm
us
doing great. How
exactly
are
where.
y'all?
Yeah, tell us exactly where you are.
I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Chattanooga. Have they got lots of trains there?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Yes.
They
There's
go
a whole
choo choo.
area called the Choo Choo.
Yeah, right. And Tennessee, obviously famous for a certain amber liquid, Jack
Yes,
Daniels. Yeah,
moonshine.
yeah. That as well. So, here we go. Look, so we have a guest or somebody already jumping on. So that's Trish. Hi, Trish. If you like, just say exactly the same as Trish. Say hello, and we'll bring your comment on a bit later on. We've got an Ask the Recruiter session, so we're going to be firing questions if you would like at Delaina, and if Delaina can't answer them, then Trish will jump in and do so. Though I doubt that will be the case. But first of all, tell us about Hello Kitty. You've got this thing about Hello Kitty.
I do. I have been collecting Hello Kitty for a long time. Kind of a sad thing, I guess. I couldn't afford it when I was young. So it was like my thing when I became an adult. One of those things. And I have Hello Kitty all the way back from the 80s, vintage Hello Kitty, and stuff like that. So I love it.
And we found this out because you were Peter Mansfield and I we do another podcast. I'm not doing it at the moment, but we do another podcast, and that's more about banter and stuff like that. And you were a guest along with Trish, and they were littered all in the background. But also skydiving. There's a picture of you skydiving, I see. So you've done a bit of that as well.
Yes. So it's my mission to fulfill anything that I want to do. I was given a scare a long time ago, and I just made it a point then that if I want to do something, like, we're doing it. We're not holding
Absolutely.
back.
Yeah, hats off. Yeah, absolutely. I totally empathise with that. And you have been, so you're in recruitment and you recruit for Jacobs at the moment. But you've been referred to as the Rockstar of Recruitment. And if people don't believe me, then they have to just go down and check your recommendations, because it is down there. So let's pop on to the actual the session itself. So you've got a military line running through you, and do you want to just tell us about that, your grandparents and stuff?
Yeah, so I come from a line of military. My grandparents are retired military, both Navy and Air Force. My dad was in the Marine Corps. I had uncles who were retired military as well, in the Navy. So there's definitely, and I was married military. So there's definitely that out there, in that thick, strong blood running through me of respect and love for the military.
Yeah, and so you didn't serve in the military yourself, but I found out something very interesting last night when we were just scoping this out. That I actually found it quite touching. Is that you've got a strong empathy with people that leave the military. And do you want to just go into that a little bit and just explain a little bit?
So this will be my very first time talking about it with people outside of a very close circuit, or a close knit group. So I've had a disability for my entire life, a physical disability. There isn't anyone who's met me in person who didn't notice it. Um, so there's there's a level of empathy that I have when for veterans. I know what it's like every day to wake up and something was taken away from you, that you can no longer physically do or handle. I've known that my entire life. I'm now a 39-year-old woman with a 70-year-old body, on the inside. So every day there's a lot of things that I face in my daily life that veterans face. Sometimes it's just anxiety. Like, I struggle. It might sound really silly, but I struggle with just walking around the block, by myself, because if I hurt myself and I trip and fall, I'm the only one who can save me. So it there's and when I hurt myself, I really hurt I hurt a lot of things. So having that anxiety, it can be very overwhelming. There's a lot of things that I go through just in my daily activities. I'm not saying I am the same as a veteran, someone who has gotten hurt in combat or anything like that, but I do understand what it's like to have to make that decision that you can't physically do something like you used to be able to, or better yet, the anxiety around a situation that you want to do, but you're just not sure. And that fear it can be pretty overwhelming. So I understand that.
Yeah, so you've got sort of like there are the psychological, not the psychological, but the mental stresses and the physical stresses, and you can you've got the empathy, and as a result of that, you've got this empathy with the military community, and you champion the cause, which is great. And just explain how for those in the UK how the US transition their military.
The US transition is very different. But at the same time, there are a lot of similarities. I would say with the differences is um the it, I think the just the process. To me, there's a lot of needs of improvement in the current process of U.S. veteran transition. Right now, their TAP class is more like a fire hose into a straw with information. There's a lot, and there's even so much more that's not covered. I do wish it was a longer transition. There were multiple classes. There were stages of transition instead of take a class, figure out your date, and have a nice day. I do think that would be better. Right now, it really just depends on if you're retiring or if you're not. If you're not, it can be a very hard time for military to transition. A lot of them who are not retiring, they typically have young families. There's no medical benefits for when they get out for their families, so that's a big concern. Their finances are a huge concern. Trying to make sure to cover everything, their bills of what their bills were with military pay, now with civilian pay, taxes. There's a lot of stuff that hit those folks a lot harder than it does other people.
Yeah, and while we're talking here, I'll come back to that in a minute. While we're talking here, we've got Trish and Richard having a right old chat away in the corner, Trish is mentioning that she likes the stage process in the US, and wishes it was a little bit more like that in the UK. But you don't only look at or champion the cause of veterans themselves; it's also military spouses.
Yes. Yes. My military spouses on both sides of the pond need to have that focus. There's a lot of um, resilience, and there's just a different position that you take. I mean, when you're helping your veteran transition out of the military, you're not just, oh crap, I need to find a job where we're going to, but you're also trying to be that emotional support for the veteran, because they're going to go through so much in their transition that your own emotional support, your own emotional needs aren't being supported. And so that doesn't even come into effect until way later. After the veteran is already out and working, does it even start to remotely get talked about? And so there's that transition for military spouses too. And I definitely would like to have a more of a light on that and what they go through, and the emotional part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a couple of charities, the Royal Marines Association over here. They're very keen on promoting military spouses within their organisation, and as are the Officers Association of Scotland. But it's often forgotten and overlooked, I think. And Trish has piled in with a comment here. So, quick question from Trish: what commonalities do you notice between US and UK spouses?
We are all the rock. So we are what helps keep you ticking. We are the reminder to go to the doctor. We are the reminder to get up in the morning and it's going to be okay. We are the ones who, despite a 40% unemployment rate, still every day get turned down for jobs and still keep applying. So the resilience is immense. And that's both sides, and there's a lot to that, that emotional part and that physical part. We're the ones who take the brunt of the transition when the service member is going through those ups and downs and those lows. We're the ones who provide the support when it comes to PTSD. And we're also the ones who see it first, before anyone else. So to me, there's a lot there. I don't really honestly see more differences than things that are relatable. I think we're probably about 90% relatable completely.
But I guess we also forget that military spouses can suffer from PTSD as well as having to deal with that of their husband or wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Trish is in with another one. Trish is very good with the questions. I love having Trish on.
Oh, I
she
love
fires
Trish.
questions
Just so it said,
yeah.
Trish is amazing. If you're watching, follow Trish. Go ahead.
Yeah, and just one quick Toady squirrels.
Toady,
just in
yes.
case.
Toady is the bomb.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an interesting question. In the US, do they have to disclose that they're military spouse when applying?
They do not have to disclose that, but it's not hard to figure out. They also aren't protected. And what I mean by that is employers are allowed to ask questions more so of a military spouse than they are of any civilian. And that needs to be addressed within organizations. I mean, there could be the federal protection, but I think it's more of a culture shift that needs to happen. And it would be great if there was a government backing on that. But absolutely, we get asked things like, well, did you guys just move here? How long have you been in town? How long are you looking to stay? Is your husband retiring? When does he get out? How does that work out? How do your plans work out for family time? I could go on, which are all none of your damn business.
Yeah, and if you asked those questions of sort of of somebody that isn't a military spouse, you'd be absolutely hauled over the coals. Yeah, it's is there anything being done to increase that protection in the US?
I know that there's things in the works. There's things in the works as far as state levels. I know that there are states who are working towards making that a law within their own state. And I know that there's been some push federally to get those protections made for military spouses. But we haven't quite gotten there yet. I know when I was a military spouse, it was more of a 70 to 80% unemployment rate, which is insanity. And it's gone down to 40, but 40% is still pretty crazy considering our national unemployment is 3%.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, just moving on to the recruitment and the unemployment, we'll just have a couple of insights from you on things like, what generally do you look for in a CV? I know they're very subjective, but what sort of things would, if you had a pile of CVs, what would stand out? What would you look for?
I would look for the skills that match the job rec I'm measuring that resume against. So I know that a lot of people, they're like tailoring. If it takes you more than 10 minutes to tailor a resume, then then you didn't have a resume set up for that job title or path in the first place. So get that set up. So if you're going into, let's say, project management to manage cybersecurity projects or cybersecurity project, and that's your background, then that rec, what they're asking for in that rec, and that matches your experience, needs to be quickly seen in a resume. But if you have that experience, then that's not the only project manager rec that you should be applying to. So it's just like if you had a background or also like in ISO. If you're an ISO and you primarily use EMAS, and the rec that you're applying to is asking for experience in EMAS, then EMAS needs to be at the top. We need to see that. And it's the same thing. Like, just read it with the job description, look at what they're asking for, what's in the requirements. Not only do you have to meet the requirements, FYI, but look in that desired section, look in the job description itself. What are the things that they're asking you to have? If you have those things, make sure it's easy to find.
This is brilliant. I think Trish and I are psychologically connected because it's quite good, because I can't interrupt and ask questions because it's very rude, but Trish can ask them in the bottom, and then we can and then we can go on them. So when you talk about rack, you mean a set of skills and attributes that particular
No, it's
person's
a
got.
jargon. I'm sorry. So rec is short for requisition
All right,
or a
rec.
job
Oh,
requisition.
it must
Sorry,
be your
that's
accent.
jargon. Yeah.
We've not got that, we've not got the accent right yet, but I'll tell you what, I'd love to hear you at the end of it doing an impression of a British person. So if you can do
Oh
that,
my gosh. I don't know if I can do
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I'll not put you on the spot. Don't worry. So and another question that I wanted to ask of a recruiter is, if you see a really interesting CV resume for those in the US, do you check them out on LinkedIn, or do you just leave it at that?
One more time.
Do you check them out on LinkedIn? Do you check their profile on LinkedIn, or do you just leave it at the resume against the job description, or is there a little bit more checking out that you do?
If the resume is heading down the path that I need it to match the rec, and I don't have a lot of candidates, so let me just paint the picture for that rec, for the job position that you applied to, and there's something missing, I might go to your LinkedIn to see if maybe it's there. And you had it posted on there, like a cert, things like that, that maybe you didn't include on the resume. Sometimes I look it up there, but most of the time, I don't click from the resume to LinkedIn. Most of the time, I'm getting you on LinkedIn before I get your resume.
Right. Okay. That's because I personally think, sort of that LinkedIn is, you can be a lot more expressive on LinkedIn and other social media platforms than you can be in a resume or a CV. So it's a particular orange box topic of mine. But I think you're absolutely right. The LinkedIn will potentially come first before the actual CV. Now, Richard asked a question here.
Would I be right in assuming most recruiters check social media? If so, what are they looking for specifically? So, I don't want to say most recruiters. I do not have time to check all your social media accounts. However, it depends on the position. the more senior the role, the more investigation they're going to do on you to make sure that you're legitimate, that you bring not only the skills, but the culture, because at that senior level, you have to also bring in the culture, because however you are and the way that you do things and the way that you believe and things like that, all that plays into a factor. So if I'm looking at someone for a director role or higher, I am going to do a little bit more investigative work to see what's going on, because you affect, potentially hundreds of people. But general, like, cybersecurity analyst or something like that, I'm not looking at your social.
So we're going down a rabbit hole here with Trish, because Trish and I are sort of, we sing from the same hymn sheet. Is there any point in that hire process that the social media accounts are investigated more? So let's just say you're going down the cybersecurity project manager route. It's not a director position or anything like that. Is there a stage where shortlisted or whatever that people do start to widen their investigation?
It depends. So a lot of times people, they're all in the same groups on social media. So let's take Facebook. I don't have Facebook, but what else? So let's take Facebook. They have groups. You're in like a bunch of different groups, and you're posting memes that are not appropriate on Facebook in these Facebook groups. There is a very good possibility that in these specialized groups, your hiring manager or the one that you're could be interviewing with is also in that group, not appreciating your memes. So that does happen. Do they reach out themselves to go see? That I'm honestly not sure. I have heard of hiring managers, not where I currently am, but I have heard of hiring managers looking things up on Facebook to see who they are.
Yeah. So it's in the business to business arena. A lot of people check a lot of people out before you start to make transactions and things like that. So Trish has also asked, do you refer potential candidates to the hiring manager who makes the hiring decision, or is it you? So what she's saying there is, do you refer candidates to a hiring manager who makes the decision, or do they give you back a short list and then you make that decision based on that short list?
That depends. So I'll explain the process and that'll answer the question. So whether you were sourced or you applied to the position, sourced meaning I found you on LinkedIn, or applied, you just, you clicked the link and you applied. You still have to meet, per compliance, the requirements of the position. So once you have met those requirements, then yes, I send you over to the hiring manager. If I happen to roll across a candidate that has stellar stuff, he, and this has happened where, gosh, I don't, there's just so much yums going on with this candidate to where I'm like, hey, you guys, like, I'm not sure what you got going on. What do you think? And we have created a position because they did have a need for it. They just hadn't created the position yet. But there was a whole lot going on with that candidate for that to happen, for someone to be pushed over for recs that don't exist yet.
And you mentioned a really important point there. There's a yum yum. I take it. I know what a yum yum is, but I take it as a phrase for yeah, we really like this candidate, but we don't have a position for. We're not advertising a position at the moment or whatever. But does a lot of that happen? You've got positions in mind. You create positions.
I do not create. So there's an approval process. So recruiters do not just create positions. There has to be there has to be a budget for that position. I think a lot of people get that confused because it all goes back to operational budget and analysis. So if there is if a position can be built, that means the budget is already there for it, or the billet. And then they decide on the position, on what they need, senior, mid-level, junior. And then we get together and chat the job description. If it's the same and we're just duplicating, that's one thing. But sometimes we go in there and we move things around and stuff like that as far as the requirements, and then we post the rec.
Yeah. So and if you've got people that are a good fit for the organization, is there a way that you can keep them on file? Well, we have GDPR in this country, so you can't keep people on file for more than 6 months without their permission.
Here, so that is the beauty of applicant tracking systems, is it tracks the applicant. So every time you apply, and please do not apply to 20 positions in a company, but every time you do submit your application, that application is stored. And the beauty part of that is when either in Taleo or any of them, when they go to create a position, any candidate that's in that system that matches, or that looks, the system is the one that generates it, but matches that job requisition, that position, then it'll automatically generate an email to that candidate, their email on file, that a position has been opened up that they could possibly match, and it'll send them a link.
Mm-hmm. So we're nearly at the end here. This has gone pretty quick, but if there's anybody got any more questions in, I know we do get people hang around in the background and don't put comments in because they like to listen and then go through later. Drop some more in, but we've got a couple of things to just talk about. You've got a really interesting ambition.
Yes, I do.
You do. So,
and today's a beautiful day to talk about it. So, before COVID, it was my goal to walk the stage as a bodybuilder. As someone who has a disability, my muscles aren't, with the disability that I have, my muscles aren't in the place that they really would need to be in my legs and other places. So the structure wouldn't be there the way it needs to be represented as a bodybuilder. But I don't like to turn myself down. I want to go for it. So I was doing that, and then COVID happened. So I'm finally back on track. I'm back on my routine. It is my goal in 2024 to walk the stage. Officially, I wanted by the 15th of March to be down 10 pounds. And today I achieved that goal. I'm one day early, so I'm really proud of myself.
Well done, you.
But I'm definitely heading that direction. Sore all over, but we're getting there. So I'm super excited.
Well, I think that's really admirable. There's, nothing should stop anybody. So, I think that's absolutely great, and I'm really pleased you chose this show to share that with people. So I wish you every luck with that. Now, before we do go, you've got a specific piece of veterans voice advice. I can't even put my teeth in, regarding military and civilian culture. So your message to veterans.
Yes. I wanted to go over the difference in culture, and just a real quick snippet. Remember that the military is completely different from the civilian sector. When you get into the civilian sector, part of your onboarding are going to be a lot of training videos. A lot of those training videos have everything to do with culture, how you treat people, how you view situations. It can, it would behoove you. I hate saying that word, but it would be immense if you really soaked in those training videos. A lot of them are HR. There's a giant difference between HR in the military, HR in the civilian sector. But all of those videos are not only to protect you from the instances that they bring up, but they're also to help you train you to realize instances and scenarios that should not happen in the civilian sector. One of the big things that people forget, when they're leaving the protection of the military is you can be sued as a civilian. Like, real talk. The things that happen, there's some things, and I'm not denying that things happen in the civilian sector either, but there's definitely a difference, in things that happened or things that you saw or whatever in the military. Well, someone just can't come up and sue the military, but they can sue a corporation. So make sure to pay attention to those training videos. Make sure to understand the state that you're in. This is this side of the pond, but the state that you're in, the laws that are out there. So then that way you're going in knowing everything before you hit that management position.
Yeah. So, I mean, the key takeaway is there: pay attention to training, your recalibration, if you like, because there's some stuff in there that's really important. Don't just tick the box and just for tick the box sake. Actually absorb it, take it in, and it will do you proud. Right, that's us drawn to a close. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us for the last half hour. Thank you very much for Trish and Richard, who are being the most sort of prolific commenters on here. So thank you very much to the two of you. But just leaves me to say thank you very much, Delaina, for joining us from all the way across the pond, and we'll see you, everyone else, next week for the Gen Dip birthday special.
Ooh, I'll be tuning in for that. That's for sure.
Good. Absolutely. So, thank you very much, and good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.